Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of philosophy, specifically the views of Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas on women and how their views have propelled the idea that women should be seen as inferior to men. These philosophies are still being felt now, even in modern society. I first came in contact with this during my master's level classes at Missouri State University. One of the professors there did extensive studies on the history of women, and it was very enlightening for me. First, let's talk about Aristotle. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher who lived from 384 to 322 BC. His works have influenced Western thought for centuries. In his work, Politics, Aristotle described women as deformed males. He believed that women were naturally inferior to men and lacked the rational capacity that men possessed. He argued that this natural inferiority justified the social and political roles assigned to women, which were largely domestic and subservient. Through the ages, other philosophers picked up on what Aristotle had to say. Galen was the next. He was between 129 and 216 AD. Galen was a prominent Greek physician and philosopher. He expanded on Aristotle's biological theories, and he believed in the concept of women being imperfect men, which was based on the idea that females were a lesser version of males due to their colder and wetter bodies. His medical theories reinforced the notion of female inferiority and influenced medical thinking for centuries. They thought somehow that the female organs were just inverted male organs, and they were less because they were women are colder, and they had to have their organs internal instead of external. Why that made any difference, I do not know, but that's how it is. His influence was so widely felt in the Greek speaking East that Christians almost immediately worked his assumptions into their own theologies. Their conclusions became the new assumptions that found their way into the library of Ambrose of Milan, Augustine's mentor. Despite the many years and many hands through which they passed a set of core Galenic ideas, the one sex theory of gender, the inferiority of female generative ability, and the materiality of the human soul were left virtually intact. Next, who pushed forward this idea was Thomas Aquinas. He lived from 1225 to 1274 AD. His most active years of writing and teaching were during the mid to late 13th century. He became an influential figure in the Dominican order and taught at the University of Paris and other institutions. His major works, including the Summa Theologica, were written during this period and continued to be influential in Catholic thought and Western philosophy. In several passages of the Summa Theologiae and elsewhere, Thomas Aquinas asserts that the inferiority of women lies not just in bodily strength, but in force of intellect. To top this off, he maintains that feminine intellectual inferiority actually contributes to the order and beauty of the universe, but he also affirms that in heaven there are and will be women who occupy higher places than men. Next was Martin Luther. He was during 1483 to 1546. While I love Martin Luther because he brought forth the Reformation and the doctrine of grace, I think he did wonders for our Christian faith. He, however, still was influential in propitiating the traditional views in gender roles. He believed that women should be confined to domestic duties and subordinate to their husbands, aligning with the Aristotelian concept of natural gender hierarchy. I think that women need to submit to their husbands, but to submit means to yield willingly. That doesn't mean you're supposed to be subordinate in any way. God created women to come alongside men and to help them because they needed help, not because we are less, because we are something that fits a puzzle piece to make them complete, to make them able to handle life. Next in history was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1712 to 1778. He was a prominent philosopher of the Enlightenment and wrote extensively about education and gender roles. In his book, Emile, or On Education, he argued that women were naturally suited for roles as mothers and wives, emphasizing their subservience to men. This perspective was in line with the traditional Aristotelian view of gender. Again, Aristotle. Next, 1724 to 1804 was Immanuel Kant. Kant was a key figure in modern philosophy. He held views that women were naturally inferior to men in terms of rationality and autonomy. He believed that women's primary roles were to manage the household and raise children, reflecting the long-standing Aristotelian view. There's much more about Kant. Another glaring peculiarity in Kant's writings on women. On the one hand, he frequently appears to affirm the kind of view about women that has provoked so much justified scorn from feminists, namely that the nature of women prevents them, mysteriously, from being equal to men. Women's nature is depicted as caring, nurturing, and attuned to the beautiful. In contrast, men's physicality and distinctively human powers of rational reasoning draws them toward the sublime. Consequently, Kant seems to be saying women are not really capable of reasoning and moral responsibility. The moral ought and should, therefore, restrict their activities to homemaking and the domestic sphere. In contrast, since men are capable of reasoning and moral responsibility, they should strive to engage in the public sphere as, for instance, scholars and political leaders. Next is Arthur Schopenhauer. Some of these I've not really heard of much, but they were evidently prominent in their time. 1788 to 1860. He was a German philosopher and was known for his particularly negative views on women. He described women as childlike, irrational, and meant to serve men, directly reflecting and even intensifying the Aristotelian belief in the natural subservience of women. Contemporary feminist scholars have highlighted how these philosophical views contributed to systematic gender inequality and how they can be deconstructed and challenged. By understanding the historical context and biases of these philosophies, we can better appreciate the progress made in gender equality and continue to push for a more inclusive future. I remember in sitting in this class and listening to some of the things I've learned. No wonder our society is so screwed up. I just, it just floored me. And it just hit me that I've experienced a lot of this gender inequality philosophy from men. And of course, we can't forget Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882. Though known primarily for his work on evolution, Darwin's writings in The Descent of Man includes views on the intellectual and physical inferiority of women, suggesting that men had evolved to be superior in various ways, his views influenced by the long-standing Aristotelian tradition. Last but not least is Friedrich Nietzsche's 1844 to 1900. He was a German philosopher known for his critical critique of traditional values, also held views that women were functionally different and inferior to men. He believed that women should focus on their roles as bearers of children and supporters of men, a perspective that echoes the Aristotelian hierarchical structure. These historical figures, among others, propagated and reinforced the idea of women being naturally inferior and subordinate to men, largely drawing from Aristotelian philosophy. This legacy has had a profound impact on societal structures and gender roles throughout history, especially in Western society, not always in other societies. In reflection, it's important to recognize the influence of historical philosophies on contemporary issues. By examining the views of thinkers like Aristotle and Aquinas, we can understand the roots of gender bias and work towards dismantling outdated beliefs. Um, I've experienced gender bias as a graphic designer. I worked with a lot of men. Believe it or not, graphic design is primarily a male dominated industry. And most places where I worked with graphic artists, very rarely was there another woman working with me. I was manager of advertising at a pool company, and me and another lady were working on um, an advertising campaign and talking and enjoying ourselves talking and getting work done. And in the other room, the boss heard us talking and said, "No talkie talkie, worky worky." And I just like, oh my gosh, I hadn't taken this class yet, or else I might have given him a little bit of my thought of my mind of what I thought about what he was saying, because I've definitely felt put down by it. But that's what we as women have had to deal with, and we definitely need to push back. I don't think that women should be over men necessarily. I don't think that women are better than men, but I think that they are different and yet equal in their own right. We do have different abilities than men. We are not as strong as they are physically, but we can do things that they cannot do. And so to say that we're less than or we're inferior is totally out of line. And we as women need to take hold of that so that we can get the self confidence that we need to go forward. I think these Aristotelian views were very much part of what has made women feel inferior and feel a lack of self confidence. And that's something I'm wanting to dispel. If you'd enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more philosophical explorations and historical insights. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think these philosophies have influenced modern gender roles? And has this information surprised you at all? It sure as heck did me. I didn't come across this through high school, and we should have. I talked to my granddaughter about some of this, and in her classes in her freshman year, they did cover Aristotelian views, and nothing was covered when I was in school about this. Um, so yeah, hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos, and follow us on social media. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.